The rest of her life is downhill.
It was supposed to be a quiet escape. July 20th, 2025. The sun was shining over Costa Rica, the kind of day that whispered peace rather than tragedy. Yet in a matter of minutes, the world would lose one of the most familiar faces of its television history. Malcolm Jamal Warner, forever remembered as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, was gone. News spread like wildfire across Hollywood. A drowning accident had taken him at just 54 years old. To millions who had grown up with him, it felt impossible. How could the boy who once laughed in America's living rooms vanish beneath the waves? But the shock of his passing was only the beginning. Days later, after the funeral, a hidden archive that Warner had kept sealed for years was quietly unlocked. Inside, family discovered a collection that felt less like storage and more like a map of his soul. Fragile photographs, handwritten notes streaked with raw emotion, contracts and concert tickets carefully tucked away. All of them revealed a man more complex than the smiling face on the screen. Among these treasures were whispers of a private world he fought to protect, a secret marriage, a daughter shielded from fame, and a philosophy that guided every decision of his life. The discovery ignited questions. Why had Warner been so determined to separate the man from the myth? Was the archive his final attempt to leave a trail, not for the tabloids, but for those willing to understand who he really was? In an industry where stars often live loudly, Warner had chosen silence, discipline, and invisibility. And now, in death, that silence had cracked open. This story isn't just about an actor or even a celebrity. It is about a man who lived in two worlds, the dazzling illusion of Hollywood and the guarded reality of a private heart. From the streets of Jersey City to Emmy nominations, Grammy triumphs, and finally, the ocean's cruel pull, Malcolm Jamal Warner's journey was one of reinvention, love, loss, and ultimately, quiet resilience. The archive he left behind is more than a collection of keepsakes. It is a blueprint, proof that even in the most relentless spotlight, one can choose to protect what matters most. And perhaps that is where his true legacy begins. Malcolm Jamal Warner's story began on August 18, 1970 in Jersey City, New Jersey, a place where concrete sidewalks met the dreams of working-class families. His name alone carried weight. Malcolm, after Malcolm X, the fiery civil rights leader who dared to speak truth to power. Jamal, after Ahmad Jamal, the jazz pianist whose notes seemed to rise above time. From the moment he entered the world, there was already a whisper of destiny in the air. His childhood home was not one of luxury. His parents separated when he was still young, leaving his mother, Pamela Warner, to raise him almost single-handedly. Pamela was no ordinary parent. She became both anchor and compass, determined to give her son not just survival, but direction. She demanded discipline, but encouraged artistry. She believed that strength and sensitivity could live in the same child. And Malcolm, wide-eyed, curious, restless, did not disappoint. By 7 years old, he was already staging one-man shows in front of the mirror, imitating the characters he saw on television. Every gesture, every line, he rehearsed them with a seriousness that seemed far beyond his years. Pamela recognized this spark immediately. She enrolled him in acting classes, later guiding him into the professional children's school in New York, a place where raw talent was sharpened into skill. While other boys his age were still navigating homework and playground games, Malcolm was navigating auditions, memorizing scripts, and stepping into children's theater productions. By 9, he had already appeared in commercials and small stage roles. He was learning how to use his eyes, his voice, his body, turning them into instruments of storytelling. Even then, his greatest weapon was authenticity. There was something about the way he inhabited a character that felt real, never forced. But behind the growing list of achievements was still the boy from Jersey City, raised in modest surroundings, holding tightly to his mother's reminders. Don't let the spotlight blind you. Remember who you are and where you come from. Those words would echo through every chapter of his life, guiding him when the world of fame threatened to swallow him whole. When we look back at the fragile photographs found in his secret archive, some of the most moving are from these early years. Snapshots of a young Malcolm clutching a bass guitar too large for his small frame, or wide-eyed ticket stubs from concerts his mother took him to, seeds of passion that would one day grow into his parallel career in music. The boy who once rehearsed alone in front of a mirror was already rehearsing for a much bigger stage, one that would etch his name into American pop culture forever. By 1984, Hollywood was searching for something fresh, a new family sitcom that could reflect a different America. NBC announced auditions for The Cosby Show, and one role in particular would change the life of a 13-year-old boy forever. Theo Huxtable, the lovable, sometimes clumsy eldest son. More than 200 teenagers from across the country lined up for the chance. But when Malcolm Jamal Warner stepped into the room, everything shifted. His presence was natural, his timing effortless, his sincerity undeniable. Out of hundreds, he was the one chosen. When The Cosby Show premiered in September 1984, it exploded. Within months, it became the #1 show in America, dominating the Nielsen ratings. Families gathered around living room televisions week after week, and there was Malcolm, Theo, the brother millions wished they had. The colorful sweaters, the playful banter, the awkward teenage lessons, all became part of the nation's cultural memory. By just 16 years old, Warner earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a comedy series. For a teenager still juggling homework and scripts, it was staggering. But with recognition came pressure. Hollywood has a history of child stars burning out under the weight of fame. For Malcolm, the danger was real, to be locked forever inside the shadow of Theo Huxtable, unable to grow beyond it. Yet Warner approached stardom with discipline. Instead of losing himself in the glitz, he doubled down on learning. He studied directing, even helming several episodes of The Cosby Show himself, a rare accomplishment for someone still in his teens. He attended school in between long filming schedules, determined not to let celebrity define him entirely. Still, fame was a paradox. On the one hand, it gave him a place in history, etched his face into America's cultural fabric, and opened doors most actors could only dream of. On the other hand, it threatened to reduce him to just one role. Malcolm sensed the trap early, and he refused to let his story end with a sweater and a sitcom laugh track. The photos found later in his secret archive tell this tension in silent detail. Backstage moments of a young man both celebrated and exhausted, fan letters stacked high, and his mother's notes reminding him to stay grounded. They remind us that while the world saw Theo, Malcolm was already plotting the next act of his life. For now, though, the 1980s belonged to him. He was America's eldest son, a role that would both bless and haunt him for decades to come. Behind the bright lights and cameras, Malcolm Jamal Warner's heart carried a story that was far more tender, far more fragile than his public image suggested. Fame made him recognizable to millions, but in private he searched for something much simpler: love, trust, and a safe place away from the world's gaze. His most poignant and enduring love story was with Michelle Thomas, his Cosby Show co-star, who played Justine Phillips. Their relationship blossomed in the late 1980s, just as both were coming of age in Hollywood. They were young, vibrant, and full of promise. Though their romance eventually ended, their bond never did. When Michelle was diagnosed with stomach cancer years later, Warner never left her side. He was there through her final breath in 1998. That loss carved a scar into him, one he would carry quietly for the rest of his life. In 2015, he wrote of her, "If there was ever an angel who walked amongst us, it was this woman." Those words were not nostalgia. They were grief, still raw decades later. After Michelle, Warner's path through love was marked by both joy and heartbreak. He shared a long relationship with Cosby Show co-star Karen Molina White from 2000 to 2007. The two became inseparable for 7 years, strong yet deliberately private, rejecting the spectacle of tabloids. Later came his high-profile romance with Regina King, an Oscar-winning actress and longtime friend. For a while, they were Hollywood's golden couple, admired for their chemistry and grace. But on Valentine's Day 2013, their love ended abruptly, leaving Regina blindsided. Warner remained silent, his pattern clear. Even in heartbreak, he refused to turn love into a headline. What the world didn't know, and what the secret archive finally revealed, was the family he built later. In 2015, through a mutual friend, Warner met a lawyer from Connecticut. This time, there were no red carpets, no interviews, no glossy magazine spreads, just two people choosing each other quietly. By 2016 or 2017, they exchanged vows in secret, away from Hollywood's glare. A year later, their daughter was born. The public saw only fragments, a single black and white photo of Warner cradling his newborn, with the caption, "Peaceful time with family takes on a whole new meaning." Beyond that, nothing. He never revealed names, never posted faces. For a man who had grown up under the world's watchful eye, guarding his family was his greatest act of love. In the end, Warner's personal life was not defined by scandal, but by restraint, devotion, and a fierce determination to protect what mattered most. For many actors who grow up on screen, there is a cruel truth. The world struggles to see them as anything beyond the role that made them famous. Malcolm Jamal Warner understood this trap better than anyone. To millions, he would always be Theo Huxtable, the sweater-wearing eldest son who cracked jokes in the living room of The Cosby Show. But Warner refused to let himself be frozen in time. Reinvention became his act of survival. When The Cosby Show ended in 1992 after 8 seasons and 197 episodes, Malcolm faced a daunting question. Who am I without Theo? Rather than retreat into nostalgia or chase easy roles, he rolled up his sleeves and started again. Just 4 years later, he returned with the sitcom Malcolm and Eddie, alongside Eddie Griffin. The chemistry between the two stars lit up screens from 1996 to 2000, proving Warner was no relic of the 1980s. He was still sharp, still funny, and more importantly, adaptable. But Warner didn't stop at comedy. He deliberately pivoted to roles that shattered the America's Big Brother mold. In the 2000s, he took on darker, more complex characters, from the sci-fi series Jeremiah to the family drama Read Between the Lines, and later in Major Crimes. Each project was another step away from Theo's shadow. And in 2018, his transformation reached a peak when he joined The Resident as Dr. A.J. Austin, brilliant, prickly, and unapologetically blunt. Viewers who once knew him as the warm-hearted teen suddenly saw him as a commanding force, a man who owned every frame with authority. Parallel to his acting, Warner nurtured the passion that had been with him since childhood, music. With his band Miles Long, he played bass, recorded jazz and spoken word albums, and toured stages across the country. For him, music was not a side project, it was a second heartbeat. In 2015, his artistic credibility was cemented when he won a Grammy Award for Best Traditional R&B Performance, collaborating with Robert Glasper and Layla Hathaway on Jesus Children. In that moment, Malcolm silenced every critic who doubted he could succeed outside television. Yet even as he reinvented himself, challenges loomed. The scandals surrounding Bill Cosby in later years cast a long shadow over the show that had defined Warner's youth. Though he had no connection to Cosby's crimes, the collapse of the Huxtable legacy pained him deeply. He admitted it was heartbreaking to see something once pure become tarnished. Still, instead of lashing out, he stayed true to his pattern: silence, focus, and work. Reinvention was never about running away from Theo. It was about proving that Malcolm Jamal Warner was always more than one role. He was an artist, resilient, and unafraid to evolve. The summer of 2025 was meant to be a season of rest. Malcolm Jamal Warner had been working tirelessly, balancing acting, music, and his podcast, Not All Hood. On July 18, 2025, just 2 days before the unthinkable, he uploaded a new episode, his voice calm, his mind sharp, his plans for the future brimming with energy. No one listening could have imagined it would be his last. 2 days later, Warner and his family visited Pauco Beach in Costa Rica. The sky was clear, the waves gentle, the air thick with laughter. He waded into the water with his young daughter at his side, the picture of peace. But beneath the surface, danger lurked. A sudden rip current, invisible and merciless, yanked them both away from shore. In those frantic seconds, Warner fought to push his daughter toward rescuers. Locals and lifeguards rushed in. The girl was pulled to safety. Malcolm was not. Witnesses recalled the horror of watching him dragged further and further out until the ocean swallowed him whole. By the time lifeguards brought him back to shore, his heart had already stopped. CPR was attempted on the sand, then again in the ambulance, but nothing worked. The official coroner's report later confirmed what his mother, his wife, and millions of fans dreaded to believe: death by drowning, asphyxiation, no foul play, no hidden cause. And yet disbelief spread like wildfire. How could a man so disciplined, once athletic, still active and in shape, lose to a current? Theories spun quickly, whispers of a hidden health condition, suspicions tied to the timing of his secret archive being unlocked. But Warner's family and officials insisted on the truth. It was a tragic accident, nothing more. For his wife and daughter, it was not speculation that lingered, but the unbearable reality of absence. One moment he was a father holding his child, the next he was gone. For fans across the world, the grief was raw. Social media turned into a digital shrine, flooded with memories, quotes, and photographs from every chapter of his career. Childhoods replayed in Technicolor, Theo's laughter, Dr. Austin's brilliance, Malcolm's bass guitar humming through smoky clubs. But perhaps what stung most was the cruel timing. Warner had spent a lifetime protecting his family from the spotlight, and in the end, his greatest act of love was his final one, saving his daughter at the cost of his own life. When the waves took Malcolm Jamal Warner, they did not erase him. If anything, his absence magnified the magnitude of what he had built. More than 40 years in entertainment had left a trail that stretched across television, music, and even literature. A body of work, both resilient and surprising, much like the man himself. For millions, he would always be Theo Huxtable. The Cosby Show ran from 1984 to 1992, 8 seasons, 197 episodes, a cultural cornerstone that redefined how black families were represented on screen. Warner's performance as the awkward but lovable eldest son earned him an Emmy nomination at just 16. Few actors could say their adolescence was preserved in the collective memory of an entire nation. But Warner never allowed his story to end there. In the late 1990s, Malcolm and Eddie proved he could anchor a show beyond the Huxtable household. In the 2000s, Jeremiah, and Reed, between the lines, revealed his range, while Major Crimes and The Resident in the 2010s confirmed his staying power. As Dr. A.J. Austin, Warner captivated a new generation far removed from the playful teenager he once embodied. Longevity in Hollywood is rare. Reinvention, rarer still. Warner mastered both. And then there was the music. From his childhood bass guitar to founding his band Miles Long, Warner treated music not as a hobby, but as an equal calling. His spoken word albums carved out a space for reflection and truth, while his performances in jazz and R&B circles earned him respect. In 2015, his collaboration with Robert Glasper and Lala Hathaway on Jesus Children won him a Grammy Award, the kind of recognition that silenced every whisper that he was just an actor dabbling in music. Beyond the spotlight, Warner was also a director, a producer, and eventually a podcaster. Not All Hood, launched in 2024, became his unfiltered voice, a space where he discussed culture, identity, and art with honesty, stripped of Hollywood's polish. His last episode, uploaded only 2 days before his death, now lives on as a haunting final gift. Even his financial life reflected discipline and purpose. By 2025, Warner's net worth was estimated at $6 million, earned not through excess but through steady, careful choices. Contracts, royalties, modest properties, and quiet investments in independent films and community arts programs all revealed a man who valued stability over spectacle. In every corner of his career, Warner left a fingerprint of integrity. He showed the world that fame could be navigated without losing one's soul. His legacy is not just measured in awards or roles, but in the way he lived, balanced, disciplined, and always searching for meaning. When the curtain finally fell on Malcolm Jamal Warner's life, it wasn't the headlines about his death that defined him. It was the silence he had chosen to keep throughout his journey and the treasures that silence protected. In an industry where privacy is often sacrificed for attention, Warner proved that true power lies in restraint. He lived a life where family came before fame, where love was sheltered from the noise, and where artistry, whether through acting, music, or words, was never compromised. The secret archive opened after his funeral revealed more than photographs and letters. It revealed values. Notes scrawled in his handwriting carried reminders to himself. Protect what matters most. Don't let the spotlight blind you. These weren't lines for the stage, they were his commandments, his way of surviving 4 decades in an industry that devours many before they can grow old. For fans, Warner's legacy is bittersweet. They remember Theo Huxtable's laughter, Dr. A.J. Austin's commanding presence, the pulse of a bass guitar in dimly lit clubs. They recall the Emmy nomination at 16, the Grammy Award decades later, the countless roles that proved his versatility. Yet perhaps his most enduring legacy is not what he gave to Hollywood, but what he withheld. By keeping his wife and daughter hidden from fame's harsh glare, Warner left behind a blueprint of devotion that is rare among stars, that the greatest love stories are often the quietest ones. His passing raises a question that lingers long after the tributes fade. How do we measure a life well lived? By the applause, the awards, the fame, or by the moments of love and protection that no one ever sees? In Warner's case, the answer seems clear. His career was extraordinary, but his humanity was even greater. As the waves in Costa Rica claimed his final breath, they could not erase the lesson he spent a lifetime teaching, that the most valuable things in life are not the ones put on display, but the ones kept safe. For all who grew up watching him, for all who found comfort in his art, and for all who now mourn him, Malcolm's story asks us to live more deliberately, to love deeper, to protect fiercely, and to remain true to who we are, even when the world demands otherwise. And now we turn to you. Which part of Malcolm Jamal Warner's journey touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If his story reminded you of the importance of love, family, and resilience, let's honor his memory together. Hit like, subscribe, and help keep his legacy alive, because stories like his deserve to be remembered.